by Sociopathic Thinkers LB's podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from beautiful Swampy Mango, South Florida, and today's date is Wednesday, November 13th, 2018. So let us begin.
This is not a drill. This is an emergency. The life of my son, journalist Julian Assange, is in immediate and critical danger. I thank you all for being here and listening to a mother's plea to ask your help to save him. Despite Julian being a multi-award-winning journalist, much loved and respected for courageously exposing serious, high-level crimes and corruption in the public interest, he is right now alone, sick, in pain, silenced in solitary confinement, cut off from all contact, and being tortured in the heart of London. The modern-day cage for political prisoners is no longer the Tower of London. It is the Ecuadorian embassy. Here are the facts. Julian has been detained nearly 8 years without charge. That's right, without charge. For the past 6 years, the UK government has refused his request for access to basic health needs, fresh air, exercise, sunshine for vitamin D, and access to proper medical and dental care. As a result, his health has seriously deteriorated, and his examining doctors warn these detention conditions are life-threatening. A slow and cruel assassination is taking place before our very eyes in the embassy in London. In 2016, after an in-depth investigation, the United Nations ruled that Julian's legal and human rights had been violated on multiple occasions, that he'd been illegally detained since 2010, and they ordered his immediate release, safe passage, and compensation. The UK government refused to abide by the UN decision. The US government has stated Julian's arrest as a priority. They want to get round the US journalist protections under their First Amendment by charging him with espionage. They will stop at nothing to do it. As a result of the US bearing down on Ecuador, his asylum is now under immediate threat. The US pressure on Ecuador's new president resulted in Julian being placed into strict and severe solitary confinement for the last 7 months, deprived of any contact with his family and friends. Only his lawyers could see him. 2 weeks ago, things became substantially worse. The former president of Ecuador, Rafael Correa, who rightfully gave Julian political asylum from US threats against his life and liberty, publicly warned that when US Vice President Mike Pence recently visited Ecuador, a deal was done to hand Julian over to the US. He stated that because of the political cost of expelling Julian from their embassy was too high, the plan was to break him down mentally. A new, impossible, inhumane set of rules and protocols was implemented at the embassy to torture him to such a point that he will break and be forced to leave. At the same time, a member of the Ecuadorian government repeatedly tries to cancel his Ecuadorian citizenship so he can be extradited directly to the US. While his lawyers challenge this latest violation of his human rights under the Ecuadorian constitution, their government lawyer has warned Julian that even his very testimony describing his suffering could be in breach of their new protocol and grounds for embassy expulsion. They have denied him visits from his lawyers for 4 days before the next hearing on Monday, jeopardising the preparation of his case and further increasing his isolation, anxiety and stress. They are setting my son up to give them an excuse to hand him over to the US where he will face a show trial. Over the past 8 years, he has had no proper legal process. It has been unfair at every turn, with much perversion of justice. There is no reason to consider that this would change in the future. The US WikiLeaks grand jury producing the extradition warrant is held in secret, has 4 prosecutors but no defence and no judge. The UK-US extradition treaty allows for the UK to extradite Julian to the US without a prima facie case. Once in the US, the National Defence Authorisation Act allows for indefinite detention without trial. Julian could very well be held in Guantanamo Bay and tortured, sentenced to 45 years in a maximum security prison or face the death penalty. My son is in critical danger because of a brutal political persecution by the bullies in power whose crimes and corruption he has courageously exposed when he was editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks. The same corrupt entities who in government tut-tut about bullying, fake news and human rights. These same bullies are bullying my son to death. It would appear that courageous, truthful, multi-award-winning journalism is now life-threatening. The legal channels have been subverted and are therefore unlikely to save him. Because this is a transnational political persecution by a savage superpower in collusion with its allies, saving Julian will require the outrage of the people of the world. I'm asking you to make a noise, a big noise, and to keep making a noise until my son is freed. We need to make our protest against this brutality deafening. I call on all you journalists to stand up now, because he is your colleague and you are next. I call on all you politicians who say you entered Parliament to serve the people to stand up now. I call on all you activists who support human rights, refugees, the environment, and are against war, to stand up now because WikiLeaks has served the causes that you fight for and Julian is now suffering for it alongside of you. I call on all citizens who value freedom, democracy and a fair legal process to put aside your political differences and unite and stand up now. Most of us don't have the courage of our whistleblowers or the journalists like Julian Assange who publish them so that we may be informed and warned about the abuses of power. But we can stand up en masse and protect them. Throughout history, when the abuses of power became too much for the people to bear, they united and stood up and stopped them. This is a moment when we must say no. This is enough. We, the people, will not stand by and watch this brave journalist die.
Thank you for listening. What you heard was Christine Assange beseeching the world to save her son, Julian, from espionage, tyranny, fighting for free press, freedom of speech. Whether you like him or not, claim to be, well, many people say he's a Zionist, all that, it doesn't matter. You have to really examine the bigger picture. The war on the press, the war on journalism, is the war on every single human being on this planet. Whether you're in the United States, Great Britain, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, etc., Australia, I can go on and on and on. Times like these, you have to toss their differences to the side and unify under one thing: principles, natural born rights. I'm proud of one of those individuals that can work with others with different views, but we share common interests and focus on it. On our certain task is to inform people, enlightened. The reason why I'm going to be talking about this, I know that everyone's focusing on the whole Broward election fraud case. which could be a distraction as well. And I say that out of respect. I know many of my colleagues who are activists from all walks of life are saying Brenda Snipes needs to be indicted. Deborah Wise-Michaud needs to be disqualified. Some called for a re-election, which I understand in good faith, based on all the sloppiness, the cluster that's been going on, even down this particular area of Broward County for a good period of time, at least 20 years. So what are you folks going to be doing? Sound the alarm? Spread the word? I'm going to do my part, and everyone should do theirs. Yes, I'm at Stash, 109 Southwest 2nd Avenue in the heart of the Hemisphere District of Fort Lauderdale. You may be hearing some sound check in the background, because there's a chance that with Revolution Live and America's Backyard. I just thank the folks here for letting me do my show. They really appreciate it. They don't bother me. They do their business. I do mine. And it's good to know your neighbors. Like I said, I live in Fort Lauderdale, so I like to know everyone as much as I can. Build a community relationship. We're going to make waves. You got to start from the bottom up, not top down. One of my comrades say that on some of these meetings. He's absolutely correct. In other words, plant a seed, not no tree. So I'm going to be narrating on what's going on with Julian Assange. And let's talk about a few other things. Yemen, of course, the real horrific ordeals happen over there, which is absolutely unacceptable. So this came out from the Activist Post, written by Aaron Cassell. It says here, Christine Assange issues call for all journalists, politicians, medical professionals, and activists to stand up for Julian Assange. As it reads here, WikiLeaks founder and former editor Julian Assange is in a dire need of health assistance, according to his mother, in an emergency plea to the world uploaded to the Unity 4J YouTube channel. Christine Assange urged officials to allow access to medical attention for her son and for the UK and Ecuador to end Assange's illegal 8-year detainment. 2 years of virtual house arrest, 6 years confined inside an Ecuadorian embassy without charge, as determined by the UN. Now, I'm not a big fan of the United Nations, but I have to agree with them on this particular matter. Fair enough, right? Absolutely. The past 6 years in the embassy, UK government has refused his request to access for basic health needs, fresh air, exercise, sunshine for vitamin D, and access to proper medical and dental care, according to Christine Assange and Julian Assange's lawyer, Greg Barnes. As a result, his health has seriously deteriorated. His examining doctors warn these detention conditions are life-threatening. The slow and cruel assassination is taking place before our very eyes in the embassy in London, Christine expressed. Assange's doctor, Sean Love, has previously stated in the opinion piece that depriving him from medical care is cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment, adding, it's time for Australia to intervene. Other doctors who examined Assange, Sandra Crosby, the associate professor at the Boston University School of Medicine and Public Health, and Brock Chisholm, a clinical psychologists in London, have stated much the same. All three called for safe passage for Assange to a hospital in an article for The Guardian they wrote. While results of the evaluation are protected by doctor-patient confidentiality, it is our professional opinion that his continued confinement is dangerous physically and mentally to him, and a clear infringement of his human right to health care. The above health concerns are coupled with surveillance technology. This is what was a requirement for Assange to remain in the embassy, including signal jammers and all the additional technology that is emitting various electromagnetic waves. Very cancerous indeed. Of course, they talked about it right here, about exposure to radio frequency radiation emitted. WikiLeaks did a tweet on that. Folks, read this stuff. You'd be amazed the dangers it can contain on a human being, especially children, where their cells are developing. Assange's health isn't the only topic Christine touches on. She also detailed as a recent press release by WikiLeaks, which noted that Ecuador former President Rafael Correa, whose administration granted Assange political asylum, said that the current U.S. Trump administration is trying to break him psychologically. That a deal had been struck during Pence's visit Ecuador earlier this year. This news comes as Ecuador is being pressured to end Assange's asylum and citizenship, so he can be arrested by British police and extradited to the U.S. to face charges under the Espionage Act. How come they don't do it to their own so-called politicians, but they'll do it to him? Because they all think alike and smell the same. They bend over to the same hidden hand. This news comes as Ecuador is being pressured to end Assange's asylum and citizenship, so he can be arrested by the British police, and extradited to face charges under the Espionage Act, the federal law often used to punish whistleblowers. Barack Obama punished whistleblowers as well, so all you worshippers that hate Trump but praise his predecessor, you're being duped. As such, the Trump administration has threatened to step over a never-crossed line, applying the secret document provision of the Espionage Act to journalist practices according to EFF, which last year condemned the threats of prosecution against WikiLeaks and Assange. There is a tweet too on WikiLeaks. You can see it for yourselves. After U.S. pressure moves accelerate strip to WikiLeaks publishers Julian Assange's Ecuadorian citizenship. His citizenship status is a barrier to rendering him to another state, as Article 39 of Ecuador's constitution forbids extradition of citizens. And same thing here about Newswire EFE, Ecuador's Attorney General, on a plan to go with the UK to bind the international arbitration, then to lose in order to be forced to hand over Julian Assange in order to avoid being prosecuted for an illegal extradition. He has his defense to honor his dirty deal with the Trump administration to extradite Assange. Ecuador's Attorney General slates deliberately going to binding international arbitration, then losing, so it will be forced to hand him over. Utterly shameless is a web article on Web Archive on Nat. Last month, lawyers representing Assange sued Ecuador accused the government of violating Assange's fundamental rights and freedoms, while Ecuador has further threatened Julian Assange that if he speaks, there would be consequences, claiming that refugees do not have speech rights, citing the defunct convention from 1929. And of course, there's a WikiLeaks on here as well. Okay, get a look all this up you can. In March, what's up, brother? In March, hold on here, I'll be right back. I will continue on here. In March, Ecuador and its leaders, Lenin Moreno, pulled the plug on Assange's internet connection. Then Ecuador further demanded Assange remove a specific tweet referencing a former political prisoner, Carlos Pejmont. The irony here is that Ecuador accused Assange of interfering in a state for mentioning another political prisoner, and Assange himself had more of his own rights taken away. In 1940, elected president of Catalonia, Luis Campanis, was captured by the Gestapo at the request of Spain, delivered to them and executed. Today, German police have arrested the elected president of Catalonia, Carlos Pejmont, at the request of Spain to be extradited. Assange tweeted. See what's going on now, right? Even Catalonia, there's still things continuing on down there with the whole debacle. Ecuador clarified its position on Julian Assange's asylum at the time by drafting new rules limiting his communications, according to WikiLeaks. The original cutoff of Assange's internet was due to an alleged breach of an agreement to refrain from interfering in other states' affairs. An action, according to Ecuador, was taken following Assange's breach of a written agreement signed with the Ecuadorian government at the end of 2017, in which he vowed not to send messages interfering in the affairs of other sovereign states. The government said in a statement, The executive remains open to the possibility of further sanctions in cases of future breaches in agreements by Assange. WikiLeaks has previously stated that Assange was never under a gag agreement, calling the allegations entirely false. WikiLeaks believe that the fact their editor is being censored for what Ecuador is stating is interfering in the state is a huge step in the direction of setting precedent that would outlaw millions of Twitter users, all journalists, and more human rights workers, even if his rights are given back. Assange is not safe and is still facing the threat of extradition, which the war is on the stop, as activist posts previously reported. WikiLeaks has recently faced increased pressure from authorities. Last year, the U.S. Senate considered a bill that would classify WikiLeaks as a non-state hostile intelligence service, bundled as part of the 2018 Intelligence Authorization Act. Presumably, that classification would authorize use of force against WikiLeaks and presumably its supporters. So hopefully you folks out there better be listening, especially the ones in the United States. All you Trump worshippers out there. New Trump haters as well. I would oppose this particular language in there. Doesn't make people feel safe. Not more than a deception, a rhetorical sham. Then in late December last year, the head legal office in Madrid, a former judge and WikiLeaks chief counsel, Baltasar Garzon, was raided by masked men dressed in all black, and security cameras were taped. Despite the break-in, nothing was taken, and the operation was referred to be as being professionally done by police. The U.S. has been on a relentless crusade against WikiLeaks since May 2010 and considers Julian Assange's arrest a priority. While several politicians have threatened Assange's life, it has been almost 8 years now since Assange was arrested and detained under one form or another, with 2 years of virtual house arrest and 6 years confined inside the Ecuadorian embassy, and now he can add unjustified solitary confinement to the laundry list. Meanwhile, it's previously been highlighted by activist posts that UK's Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt dared Assange to walk out of the Ecuadorian embassy. He might have little said too much about an active investigation when he said that Assange was facing serious charges, because the article is now absent from news.com AU's website. And it says here about the foreign minister taunts political refugee to give up asylum, so you gotta look at that as well. Charges against Assange in Sweden have been dropped, and he is facing only a minor charge in the UK for failing to turn up to a court hearing. So, it is unknown what serious charges Hunt was referring to unless they are sealed charges from WikiLeaks grand jury. This may be why the article was taken down at the time without notice. Display 404 error. It is worth noting that is exactly what happened when Tommy Robinson's stories were demanded to be deleted. WikiLeaks also highlighted early last month that U.S. Congressman wrote an open letter to Ecuador President Lenin Moreno stating that in order to advance crucial matters from economic operations to counter narcotics assistance to the possible return of USAID mission to Ecuador, we must first resolve a significant challenge created by a predecessor, Rafael Correa, the status of Julian Assange. One moment, looks like a train's coming by here. Alright, see what we got here. So, I like what it says. Let's open this up a little bit. Yay, how cute. We are very concerned with Julian Assange's continued presence at your embassy in London and his receipt of Ecuadorian citizenship last year. Most recently, we are particularly disturbed to learn that your government restored Mr. Assange's access to the internet. Oh my goodness. On numerous occasions, Mr. Assange has compromised the national security of the United States. He has done so by publicly releasing classified government documents along with confidential materials from individuals connected to our country's 2016 presidential election. As you yourself have noted, but he has repeatedly used his standing in the international media to meddle in the affairs of foreign governments such as Spain and the United Kingdom. This has frayed Ecuador relations with the like-minded government, Mr. Assange also remains wanted by British authorities for bail violation. It is clear that Mr. Assange remains a dangerous criminal and a threat to global security, and he should be brought to justice. I am so sorry. I have to laugh. It's funny about this WikiLeaks is ahead of midterms, ranking Democrat but not Republican House Foreign Relations Committee. Pressure. So it's the Foreign House Relations Committee. He's going to tell Ecuador how to clean your rear end. Good grief! Can we say lousy lousy U.S. foreign policy? Absolutely. If the UK or the Ecuador does decide to illegally hand over Julian Assange to the U.S. in violation of 2 UN rulings, it is inevitable that we see a reign of leaks that the world has never seen that will undoubtedly rock society as WikiLeaks has consistently for 11 years. Last year, Moreno vowed to stop Assange from revealing further corruption about the United States for the duration of his stay at the embassy, stating he would gag Assange from revealing further corruption about the U.S. Although Moreno claimed to support Assange's asylum, he previously said that he would ask him to be very delicate when he addresses international politics, especially regarding countries with which we have good relations, reported Latin America's news outlet Telecer, which they were purged from Facebook, but it looks like they put them back on. It's not just always the hard fanatics like Alex Jones, whatever you call it, but they got purged as well. So that tells you what these private entities are about. As a journalist and Internet Party NZ President Susie Dawson previously posed the question in her Being Julian Assange mega article on Assange's situation and WikiLeaks history. We need to ask ourselves whether we are watching Assange die before our eyes. Alright, as I continue on, my friends. Yes, you're hearing music in the background from that metal band from the San Francisco Bay Area, Machine Head. Rob Flynn from Violence, and Phil Demmel as well. Alright, continue on here. Assange's situation is getting worse with each passing day between his health and the isolation without charge, which according to Human Rights Watch General Counsel Diana Poe Kemper is looking more and more like solitary confinement. And they have Assange's defense and the witch hunt. So, and the WikiLeaks witch hunt. Julian Assange needs support that isn't coming from mainstream media, the fourth branch of the government, Immortal Technique reference. That support comes from grassroots movements, dissident activists and hacktivists worldwide, as well as with playback in defense of the WL blockade, as well from readers like you share this article in support of Assange's legal defense. And you sense the calling and feed your conscience, you won't live with the death of a journalist. Please join the Unity 4J WikiBees Discord, where you can network and organize with other like-minded individuals on the streets, action and legal actions, petitions and protests for Julian Assange. It is important to note, as all the unfolds that WikiLeaks recently announced that one of Assange's longtime associates, Kristen Hafrenson, took over for him as WikiLeaks editor-in-chief. So go read WikiLeaks and learn hidden history about the place that we live in, and stop letting corporate news tell lies to your children. For the up-to-date, accurate information on Julian Assange's plight, see at WikiLeaks, Assange, Mrs., and at Unity 4 Twitter accounts. The website Unity 4J will be up to date with information, live streams, and basically protests will be held of Julian Assange. And this is true, my friends. And remember, this is just an example on the war on journalism. It's got to be that to everybody, regardless if we like these individuals or not. If they can burn him, anyone can be next. If you're going to say the heck with them, you'll be entrapping yourself that you could be the next in line and go, help me. I didn't really care. I hate Julian Assange. I deserve he got screwed. Now it's backfiring on me. And this is one of the key. You have to always be aware of that mindset. This is what the Orwellian indoctrinators want. Want us to be obedient, submissive, and kiss the floor they walk on. Well, remember this, my friends. When it comes to rebellion, dissidents, you gotta be like cockroaches. They can't kill us all. Stand up for Assange. Stand up for freedom of the press, freedom of speech, worldwide, regardless if you support these individuals or not. Principle is the key to liberation. So, I recommend it. I beseech everyone to feel the same, regardless, because this has to be stopped. Him being extradited here or the UK. We gotta end the war on terror because it's a conflict with ourselves. Well, speaking of the war on terror, this came out yesterday from Consortium News. It says here, Yemeni war deaths have been underestimated by 5-1. Civilian casualties in the 3 years of horror in Yemen has vastly underestimated by mainstream organizations, reports Nicholas Davies. Total deaths in Yemen top more than 100,000. This is by Nicholas J.S. Davies. An NGO responsible for reporting on the war deaths has acknowledged it has underestimated the casualties in the 3-year conflict at least 5-1. Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project had originally estimated that about 10,000 people have been killed in the war in Yemen. Roughly the same number reported by the World Health Organization, whose surveys are regularly cited as estimates of war deaths in Yemen by UN agencies and the world's media. ACLED now estimates the true number of people killed in Yemen is probably between 70,000 and 80,000 people. ACLED's estimates does not include the thousands of Yemenis who have died in the war in direct consequences such as starvation and preventable diseases like diphtheria and cholera. UNICEF reported in December 2016 that a child was dying every 10 minutes in Yemen, and the humanitarian crisis has only worsened since then. A rated total of all deaths caused directly and indirectly by the war, by now more than 100,000. Another NGO, the Yemen Data Project, revealed in September 2016 at least a third of Saudi-led airstrikes, many of which involved U.S.-built and, until Friday, U.S.-refueled warplanes using U.S.-made bombs, were hitting hospitals, schools, markets, mosques, and other civilian targets. This has left at least half the hospitals and the health facilities in Yemen damaged or destroyed, according to the Yemen Data Report, leaving them hardly able to treat the casualties of the war or serve the communities, let alone to compile meaningful figures for the WHO's survey. Even comprehensive surveys, fully functioning hospitals would capture only a fraction of the violent deaths in a war-torn country like Yemen, where the most of those killed in the war do not die in hospitals. And yet the UN and the world's media have continued to cite the WHO survey as reliable estimates of the total number of people killed in Yemen. Dramatically wrong. In this three-part series of Consortium News in April, I claimed such estimates of civilian deaths in U.S. war zones were likely to be dramatically wrong, because that was a epidemiologist have found whenever they have conducted serious mortality studies based on well-established statistical principles in war zones around the world. Epidemiologists recently used some of the same techniques to estimate about 3,000 died as a result in Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. Studied in war-ravaged Rwanda and Democratic Republic of Congo have been widely cited by Western political leaders and Western media with no hint of controversy. Some of the same public health experts who had worked in Rwanda and Congo use same methods to estimate how many people have been killed as a result of the U.S. and UK invasion of occupied Iraq. In two studies they published in the Lancet Medical Journal in 2004 and 2006, they found that about 600,000 people have been killed in the first 3 years of the war and occupation. Broad acceptance of these results would have been politically disastrous for the U.S. and UK governments. It would also have further discredited the Western media that supported the invasion of Iraq and were still blaming the Iraqi victims of the illegal invasion of their country for the violence and the chaos of the occupation. The British Defense Ministry Chief Scientific Advisor described the Lancet studies designed as robust and their methods as close to the best practice, and British officials immediately that they were likely to be right. In the US and UK governments nonetheless launched a concerted campaign to discredit them. No scientific basis. In 2005, as American and British officials and their acolytes in the corporate media discounted his work, thus Roberts, the lead author of the 2004 study, told the UK media watchdog Media Lens, it is odd that the logic of epidemiology embraced by the press every day regarding the new drugs or health risk somehow changes when the mechanism of death is the armed forces. Roberts and Johns Hopkins School of Public Health at the time of the 2004 study and now at Columbia accurately stated there was no legitimate scientific basis for the objections being raised to his work and its results. But it was not so odd that embattled political leaders would use all the tools at their disposal to try to salvage their careers and reputations, and to preserve the U.S. and UK's future freedom of action to destroy countries that they stand in their way. By 2005, most Western journalists in Iraq were hunkered down in Baghdad 45 Green Zone, reportedly mainly from the SecCom briefing room. They ventured out. They were embedded with U.S. forces traveling by helicopter or armored convoy between 4 or 5 U.S. bases. Jamal was one of the few brave, unvetted American reporting from Iraq. He later named his book about his time there beyond the Green Zone. Dar told me he thought a true number of Iraqis killed might be even higher than the Lancet studies estimates, and that it was certainly not much lower at the Western propaganda machine insisted it was. Unlike Western governments and the Western media in the Iraq case, and U.S. agencies and the same Western media in Afghanistan and Yemen, Assange does not defend his earlier inadequate estimates of war deaths in Yemen. Instead, is conducting a thorough review of his sources to come with a more realistic estimate of how many people have been killed. Working back from the present, it now estimates that 56,000 people have been killed since January 2016. Andrea Carboni of Assange told Patrick Cockburn of the Independent newspaper in Britain that he believes Assange's estimate of the number killed in 3.5 years of war on Yemen will be between 70,000 and 80,000 once it has finished reviewing its sources back to March 2015 when Saudi Arabia, the U.S., and their allies started the war. But the true number of people killed in Yemen inviolably been even higher than Assange's revised estimate. As I explained in my Consortium News report, no such efforts to count the dead, review media reports, hospital records, and other passive sources, no matter how thoroughly, can ever fully count the dead amid of the widespread violence and chaos of a country ravaged by war. This is why the epidemiologists have developed statistical techniques to produce more accurate estimates of how many people have really been killed in the world war zones. The world still waits for that kind of genuine accounting of the true human cost of the Saudi-U.S. war in Yemen, and indeed of all America's post-9/11 wars. As I said, an earlier version of this article appeared on Counterpunch. So the whole thing is this, my friends. It's a lot bigger than what it is, and accuracy is very effective. So you gotta really look at these areas. So that's why an individual like myself don't like this whole ordeal and what's going on with the illegal wars and so forth. But everything's got to be accurate to the core. And we got to end these illegal wars. I was against this from the very beginning. People still climbing, oh yeah, it's okay to bomb them. If it's Israel, they're, oh, anti-Semitic. All these illegal wars are unacceptable. Good, beautiful people from those areas are being hurt, terminated, and killing many generations. And Yemen is considered one of the most poorest countries in the Middle East. So I don't really buy their garbage. So we're going to end all of these illegal wars. And I think the Trump administration, that's more important than Julian Assange as far as I'm concerned. People in Washington better start waking up and stop feeding the military-industrial complex. That's what person myself is for, non-interventionism. All right, I'll be right back, so stay tuned. Cool, so we're going to do one more here. Came from Bob Livingston Alerts. I like their philosophical commentary. It's had a great amount of merit, and it's not like partisan inclined. So as it reads here, the sociopathic establishment wants to turn good guys into bad guys. You know, the whole cloak and dagger fiasco. It's sometimes easy to forget the core battle that is being waged in the face of spread of globalism. Some people think it's about the political left versus the political right. Some people think it's capitalism versus socialism. Some people think it is about West versus East. And it's still more colorful subsets of people seem to think it's the Jews versus everyone else. None of these assumptions is correct. People are getting caught up in the conflict of agenda, or they get caught up in their own biases, and they tend to forget that there is more metaphysical war being waged, and that this war is perpetuated by specific people with specific moral inclinations. While globalism is often presented as a noble and irrational cause designed to save humanity from itself, the elitist minority behind the agenda are not notable or rational in the slightest. This becomes clear in their actions, which represent an unjustified and to justify the means approach to economic geopolitics and social discourse. It also becomes clear in how they attempt to obstruct, even demonize people when trying to act outside the system. The truth is that the core battle being fought today is as old as history itself, good versus evil. Now there are many people, globalists included, that will attempt to dismiss this notion. They will construct any number of distractions, manipulations, and subversions in order to keep the public focused on anything other than the questions we should be asking. The most common disinformation tactic is the use of moral relativism. They will argue from a position that good and evil are merely social constructs, the same way that some people argue that gender is merely a social construct. This is based on the Freudian model of psychological function, in which human beings are seen as blank slates and that are imprinted on from childhood. But the people that push the snake oil have long ignored evidence to the contrary, from everyday observations to scientific studies showing moral inclinations even in infants. The psychologist Carl Jung, often attacked for his anti-Freudian stance, established through numerous studies that most human beings have innate characteristics of personality as well as an inborn orientation toward a moral compass. As Jung noted in On Earth's theory, morality is not imposed from outside. We have it in ourselves from the start. Not the law, but our moral nature, without which the collective life of human society would be possible. That's Carl Jung. I like that. Jung's observation is one of science and for common sense. For if humanity had no internal moral compass, we would have self-annihilated thousands of years ago. We would be extinct. He also notes in his book, The Undiscovered Self, that there is indeed a minority of people that are essentially born without a conscience or moral footing. The architectural image of evil is usually one of the destruction or destructive acts done either without forethought or done quite deliberately without remorse. Another definition of evil would be action without empathy or conscience. Most of people have an inherent relationship between good and evil concepts and are capable of either good or evil actions according to the choices they make. The vast majority of people feel guilt or remorse when they do something for their own personal gain that ends up harming others. But there is a narrow percentage of people that does not seem to have any inherited conscience whatsoever. They feel absolutely nothing. I have written extensively on the subject of narcissistic sociopaths as a source for what would be what I will call organized evil. This is a far different issue from individuals that make terrible decisions thoughtlessly. This is about a highly structured cult of people born without inherent moral compass or conditioned over time to suppress their moral compass. The strategies commonly used by narcissistic sociopaths match almost exactly with the strategies used by globalists in the pursuit of their own agendas. This includes painting good people as villains in the public eye and even manipulating good people into thinking their empathy is a weakness or a crime. Narcissistic sociopaths can be adept at blending into normal society through various means of camouflage. They mimic the character trait of others and construct elaborate public images that are approximations of human behavior, but they grow tired of always being forced to adapt. They see themselves as far superior to the common man, so why should they have to hide their true nature? Narc sociopaths seek to demonize moral behavior because they want to mold the people around them or society itself to be more like them. They imagine a world in which they would no longer need to hide, a world in which they are worshipped for their superior predatory traits. Identifying these people individually is not difficult. Most narcs are discovered by people close to them within about 6 months as a projected image begins to fall apart under scrutiny. The problem with organized evil is that uses the system from government to media to protect the identities of narcissistic sociopaths. Organized evil is often presented in an honorable and righteous form. Every action is glossed over with moral intent. To put it more simply, evil people assert that they actually want to do good, but that good must be achieved by force. This might sound like such a terrible thing to some. Our society today constantly entertains the notion that the highest form of morality is when we pursue the greatest good for the greatest number. I have seen this attitude on the left and right side of the political spectrum in the form of statism, meaning that there are many on the left and right of the political spectrum that believe good can be enforced through the use or abuse of government. In this regard, the two political sides are not very different. They both agree that government is a tool to be used to enforce the greater good. They only disagree on how government should be used to attain that end game. This is the first great trap that is exploited by the establishment, to turn otherwise good people into useful minions for evil designs. Like the One Ring in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, many people think that in the right hands, government can be used for good, but the power of government corrupts, and those with honorable intentions invariably lose their moral compass. Establishments, elites, organized narcissistic sociopaths pass one ring from one side of the political spectrum to the other. Then they sit back and watch as it purifies and corrupts the soul of the participants. Whether left or right, each side thinks they have the power to change the world when they control government. The reality is that they have no power, and the elites benefit. The next trap used by the establishment is to use disinformation and faulty logic to turn good deeds into evil deeds, turn the positives into negatives. I witnessed this mentality recently after I posted an article by FEE.org on the criminalization of food charity for the homeless. The majority of responses I received in emails were supportive of the article's position that state criminalization of food charity is wrong and represents the expansion of the nation state to the detriment of those people who have the least. However, other emails were surprising. Some people argue that the average person is not competent enough to give food to the homeless in a way that is safe. Therefore, government is justified in legislating laws that would fine or jail non-sanctioned charity workers. This, of course, a common thesis among statists, who claim that we are all children that need to be carefully monitored by government, which is only professional source of aid to the citizenry. We could tell that to the past mayor, Jack Styler, and the Fort Lauderdale City Commission. Correct? Absolutely. They're a very good example of saying, we know better. They can't even clean their own buildings. Restricting charity work is part of an effort to expand the nanny state, but I believe there is something deeper going on here. Government and narc-sociopaths hate non-sanctioned charity because it's a form of self-determination on the part of the public. Charity groups not licensed by government prove that much of what government does is unnecessary because the citizenry has the ability to do it all themselves. So when government knows best, it turns to crap. Food in particular is psychologically equated with life. The political elite want to be the only givers of life. They want a monopoly. The attack on the food charity groups is an attack on the public psychology, making good people out to be reckless and dangerous. Just as governments want you to believe that that only they are professional enough to protect you from physical harm, they also want you to believe that only they are professional enough to administer alms. Another, even more insidious argument I received in emails was that government should be used to stop charity work because the homeless represents a parasitic presence in a society that should not be enabled or encouraged. The claim being that these people want to live the way they want to live are feeding off others through trickery. Frankly, I'm not sure this is relevant. Even if it were true, all homeless people are grifters looking for an easy meal. It's up to the individual to determine if they want to give these people charity. It's not up to the government. But it is a classic position of the narcissistic sociopaths who claim that people in need are actual all con men, and that people that have helped them are evil or stupid, enabling the con. Evil people project their own inner darkness onto others, taking good deeds and twisting them into harmful to the greater good, as this is where we find the root of the matter. If the sociopathic establishment can convince us that everything our conscious tells us is wrong, they can create a world which their fringe sociopathy becomes the norm. This obviously leads to catastrophe, but organized lies mostly comfortably in the midst of catastrophe, as long as sociopathic narcissists think they are maintaining their own control over their chaos. They see the end game as justified. The pointless of their lives and existence is never concerned. Well, you always got to see it this way. Government is the parasite of society. No ands, ifs, or buts. That's how I look at it. So when you got narcissistic people, you got folks out there who want to do good things, and they say they're wicked, evil, and disgusting, and they wear a tinfoil hat. Good example, Congressman Ron Paul. They gave him a lot of garbage. Now look what's happening, my friends. They don't want righteous individuals. They want herd conformists to be numbered, to be do as they told. If they say bend over, the guy goes how far, please. So, that's why when it comes to government, you never trust them. Period. No exceptions. Reserved liberty. We need eternal vigilance. And that is it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us on social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you may say something that's interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondence with decorum. I will post all my social media sites and email addresses on my speaker page and beyond. All right, my friends. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resists healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love. And may your guardian spirits be with you.